In this lesson, we're going to take a look at internal CSS plus some two important concepts. So let's first start off by installing an extension on Google Chrome, and this is called pesticide. So I could search up Google Chrome, and I could search up pesticide. So it's going to be the first link over here. And we're going to choose this one over here. It says pesticide for Chrome without hover bar. We're going to click on Add to Chrome and Add Extension. Great. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and actually change a few settings. So if we click on this puzzle piece at the top right, we can see our pesticide extension. We're going to pin this, and that way it shows up over here. And we're going to right click on it. We're going to click on Manage Extensions. So if we go all the way down over here where it says allow access to file URLs, we're going to go ahead and allow this by pressing this button over here by toggling it on. Great. Now we are done. So we could go ahead and reload the page, and we will click on the pesticide button over here, or the extension. And we have a bunch of rectangles and cubes and shapes with 4 sides. And this is because this pesticide application has went ahead and drawn these boxes, rectangles, or whatever shapes around all our elements in our HTML code. That way we can see where each thing is located, and this will come in very useful when you're debugging things, or when you want to add an element, when you want to change colors, or important things like this. Great. So I could go ahead and actually turn this off by pressing on the pesticide button, which is at the top right, or I can turn it on and I could simply just reload the page, and that way everything is gone. Great. So last time we left off by simply changing the background color, as you can see over here, to this coral color, and we changed the H1 to a white color. And in this lesson, we're going to take a look at internal CSS. Internal CSS is the second thing that we talked about in yesterday's lesson. And in that lesson, we talked about how we can have inline CSS. So we could have CSS in one line with the same in the same line as HTML. We can have internal CSS, which is CSS in the HTML file, and we have external CSS, which is CSS in a completely different file. Okay, and we're gonna start typing in some internal CSS in this lesson. Well, how can we do this? First off, what we're going to have to do is actually add some space below the title. As long as it's within the head tags, it could technically be anywhere, but I usually prefer it to be the last thing. And I usually add some space so I don't confuse anything. Next, I'm going to type in style, and I'm going to press enter, and you will see I get these 2 paired tags. I do not need this attribute and attribute value, so I could go ahead and delete these. Great. So now we could go ahead and actually type in proper CSS code. So this over here just means, oh, we're going to go ahead and actually write CSS code here. So HTML, don't worry about this. This is going to be your CSS code. It's going to be for this document, and that's it. So now what we're going to do is actually change the background color via internal CSS. First off, what I'm going to do is delete this inline CSS over here by deleting it like that. And what I'm going to do is type in the CSS code to change it over here. So many of you might think I can simply go ahead and type in background, color, and I could write white, or let's say black, and like that. And if I reload the page, you'll notice that nothing happens. It's white and it's not black like we defined over here. Well, that's because we haven't told it what to change. So this is going to be very confusing for CSS, and it can't really understand what we wrote over here. So to actually fix this, we have to define what we're going to be changing. So we're going to be changing the body, right? So we changed, we did inline CSS code for the body because the body is basically the whole page. If we want to do inline, internal CSS change, we want to change the body. So we could type in just body like this. And now I could add curly brackets, and I've pressed enter, and I could go ahead and type in my CSS code. So I could go ahead and type in background, color, and let's give it coral. And we're going to add the semicolon at the end. And if I go ahead and reload the page now, as you can see, the CSS code is now applied. Again, this is because we had to define that, oh, we want to go ahead and actually change the body tag. Great. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and change the H1 tag over here with this style tag over here. So I could go to my H1. I do not need the style attribute over here. I could go ahead and delete this, and I can simply go over here, type in H1, and I could go ahead and type in color, and I could type in white, and I could reload the page again, and nothing should change, and that is correct. Great. So you may notice that there's something strange with my code over here. I wrote color in the same line as H1 and in the same line as these parentheses over here. Again, that's because this basically means that whatever code is in between these two parentheses is actually CSS code. So I could go ahead and put this in any way I want. So I could do this, I could put this all the way back, I could reload the page. Everything is still working. I could even put this down 10 lines. Everything will still work. It's completely up to you, but I usually prefer to have it on a separate line. So something maybe like this. It kind of keeps my code neat. So if I go ahead and reload the page, again, nothing changed because CSS noted that this over here is probably associated with this over here. So what this means is that CSS is going to think that H1 is related to this first bracket that it comes across, and that means that this bracket must be paired with this bracket down here. So therefore, any code that's in between this is going to be applied to H1. And this may sound complicated, it really isn't. Basically, all I'm trying to say is that you can go ahead and put these brackets in any ways, or parentheses in any position that you want. So over here, down here, over here, or you could have everything on the same line. It's completely up to you. But in this, for the rest of these videos, I'm probably going to be using either this over here, or having body or whatever the name is with these parentheses or bracket over here, curly bracket. Sorry, I kept on saying parentheses. It's not parentheses, it's curly bracket on the same line, and or I could go ahead and add the curly bracket on the next line. Great. So what we're going to do from over here is go ahead and change the background color, for example, for these H2s over here, for all of them. So let's go ahead and go to one of these H2s. So let's find it over here. We have my education. And as you can see, it is an actual H2 tag. So I'm going to go ahead and change all of them. So I could go ahead, go over here. I could do H2. And within this, I could go ahead and write color is white. And if I go ahead and reload the page, as you can see, everything is basically white now. Great. So remember, if you do run into any errors or if your code isn't functioning properly, make sure you check your curly brackets. Let's say that we wanted to go ahead and actually change the color of my education to red and keep the rest of these as white. How will I do this? This is an interesting concept, and we will get into this more later on, but for now, I'm going to quickly go over it. So first, I'm going to go ahead and actually change the inline CSS because we only want to change this one element's color. So I have to go ahead and find my education, which is over here, and I'm going to go ahead and type in color, and I'm going to, I have to type in style, and I have to write the color is going to be, for example, red, like that. And now I could go ahead and reload the page, and now I have my education in red just like that. That is perfect. Great. So what does this really mean? So what happened over here? Didn't we set my education to white up there over here? So basically what's happening is that CSS kind of prioritizes what's first, second, and third. So inline CSS has number one priority. So I'm just going to add a comment. I'm going to write has number one priority, right? Priority. And inline CSS is actually what we use in the last case scenario where we wanted to override everything. Usually we could go ahead and actually add code all in external CSS or internal CSS. So the second thing that's going to get priority is internal CSS. So it's going to be internal CSS, and the last thing that's going to have, the last choice is going to be basically external CSS. Great. So what does this mean? So first off, if we go ahead and actually change the color of an H1, let's just say my name, with the internal CSS over here, so with this, it's going to change. Yes, it's going to change to white, but when it goes to the inline CSS, it's going to have number one priority. So it's going to be more important than internal CSS. So whatever's in my inline CSS is going to go ahead and override my internal CSS. So whatever it says over here really doesn't matter anymore. It's actually going to be whatever's on the inside of my code. And over here where we have external CSS, this is the last priority. So if I had something over here, internal CSS can override that, and then inline CSS can also override that. We will go more in depth into this concept in the next video. Great. Now let's go ahead and change the background color. Let's say for my name over here, or let's say my education. So how can I do this? Again, I do not want to change everything's background color. Instead, I want to focus on only changing this thing's background color. So I could go ahead and go all the way down, and I could add another inline CSS code. So I could add a space, because this semicolon over here just means, oh, this is the end of the line of this CSS code. You could go ahead and go to the next command. The next command, we would just want to write background color, and we want to set it to, for example, black. So if I reload this page, we now have this over here with a black background, red foreground. Great. And as you may have noticed, everything on this line, so everything on the same line as my education, is black. So if I follow this all the way to the end, it's all black. And if I turn on pesticide at the top right, you'll notice that the shape of this over here, this text, goes all the way to the end. So I'm going to go ahead and teach you on centering things now, since we do know that this box over here extends all the way to the end. So how do we center things? Well, let's go ahead and go back to the top where we have our H1. I'm going to go ahead and center my name. Well, how do I do this? Simply, I have to type in text align. I'm going to go ahead and align my text, and I'm going to align it to the center. So like that. So basically this means, again, I'm going to go ahead and grab my text. I'm going to align my text to the center. It's very, very important that you have this knowledge or understanding of how things work. So if it's more logical to you, it'll be a lot easier for you to memorize CSS code. So if I go ahead and reload this, you'll notice that my name is now centered on this page. But one thing I really don't like is actually the color of these paragraphs, I believe. So if I go ahead and scroll down over here, as you can see, these are paragraphs. So I'm going to go ahead and change the color of the paragraphs. But I want a very specific color, which I do not know the name of. So I can't go ahead and just write color and I can't really remember the name of this color. What I'm going to have to do is actually go ahead and search this up. So if we go ahead and actually search up hex color over here, it's by Google. If we go ahead and search up hex color, you'll see that we have this color picker over here. So what we could do is actually adjust this bar at the bottom to find a good shade. So I kind of like blue, this blue over here, and I could now click on this over here at the top, and I can choose the exact color that I want. So I kind of want a light blue over here, and to actually get this color's name, it's kind of impossible because we can't really define every single color's name in the world. So to do this, we've came up with a few concepts. For example, RGB colors, RGBA colors, and hex colors. So hex colors is what we're going to focus on in this video. And in the next video, we may take a look at RGB and RGBA. But basically, a hex color over here is a specific set of letters and numbers after a hashtag or a pound symbol. And we'll go ahead and actually examine this in a few seconds. For example, if I drag my cursor over here all the way to the bottom, as you can see, everything is 0, 0, 0, 0. And if I drag this all the way to the top, to the white, everything is F, 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 F. Great. So we really want to get that nice blue color, which is over here, and that's defined by this hex color over here, which is CC FCFF. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this by right-clicking, clicking on cut, and I'm going to paste it in my code on this side, and I can just add a semicolon at the end, and now I have my color. Great. So if I go back to my page and I reload it, you will see now this is a really, really bright shade of whitish blue mix, and I might want a little bit more of a darker blue color. So I could go ahead and actually drag this a little bit further. I could go ahead and copy the hex color, and I could go ahead and select my previous hex color, and I could go ahead and change it to this value over here. So if I go ahead and go back to my website and I reload it, everything is a little bit better. So yes, this is blue now, and this is exactly what we wanted. So again, if I do zoom in, you'll see, yes, this is blue. So that's how we write internal CSS mixed with inline CSS, and in the next video we're going to take a look at external CSS, maybe RGBA and RGB, and we'll talk more about priorities.